I wasn't a huge fan of hole one when I first saw it.
That would be
this
so
one
sad.
would be so sad to have a roll away.
We wanted to bring the hole back to its original design.
And the guy that goes through there is going to hate us, and I'm sorry.
It's Maple Hill Week. I'm Jefferson, and you're watching the Disc Golf World MVP Open preview. But before we can get into the course changes, gotta thank all of our Patreon members for continuing to support us while we live in a minivan trying to bring you our unique disc golf coverage. Maple Hill currently sits inside the top 5 best courses in the world, and for a long time held that #1 spot. That hasn't stopped course designer Steve Dodge along with his talented crew to keep improving the property.
Maple Hill is a gorgeous place to be.
Maple Hill is awesome, as everyone knows.
I think Maple Hill is a bit of a different course. A lot of tough holes. This is probably one of the harder courses on tour.
I feel like this is one of the courses where if you're having a bad day, you could double bogey like every hole.
The course is probably playing harder than it's ever been.
There's enough birdies out here. You know, it's not a full-on distance competition, although there are holes that are like straight up distance competition holes.
This year would be no different as Maple Hill saw plenty of changes along with some additions. The biggest being the brand new Triple Mando on iconic hole 1. It was revealed earlier this year and was met with mixed emotion among fans. But what did the professionals have to say?
I wasn't a huge fan of hole one when I first saw it was going to happen.
Hole one's neat. I think being the first 2 rounds, people might play it a little safe.
Little ball and bridge thing. That's gonna be pretty cool. New change for this season.
Looking back at it, all the way to the tee pad.
I think this thing's kind of controversial, but I don't hate it. I think it's fine.
I've seen triple mandos in disc golf at other events. I don't think they're as good as they can be. One, I love. I think that's a perfect thing. You can't cheat the sides. I watched people get lucky through those sides every time, and you can't do that anymore, which I love. It should be a pure shot to enter into that green. It's a fantastic hole. The woods on the sides, when we first built that hole, were very thick. We wanted to bring the hole back to its original design and now you literally have to go through the intended opening.
The biggest thing this gap does on the second shot is if you throw a bad drive and you're not lined up with the gap, you can't even go for it because it's such a unique shot. But I think it's kind of cool. Adds a unique look to it.
I think this is shorter than it was last year, is it not?
Right. It used to be
10 feet. It was like, where that bullseye.
Feet, yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's more of a straight shot.
Then I saw they move the basket about 20 feet closer to the gap, and so it makes the hole just so much better. Just that little change. Instead of having a difficult, 45-footer, you don't have to go as aggressive through that triple mando. And so I think it's a great change. I think it looks amazing.
If you do something, it needs to be beautiful. People want to feel proud of what they're playing. They want to feel proud of disc golf. And so it needs to be substantial. You need to know 100% if you made it or you didn't.
I want to show people, if you're going to do a triple mando, make sure it's wide on the edges, make sure it's wide on the top. People can tell very easily if you made it. And it's a nice solid structure that goes with the aesthetic of the property.
As a sport, we want to take a step and bring triple mandos into the game in other locations. I think it's important that they fit the aesthetic of the course. They be beautiful. It's easy to tell if you're in or out. And that's what we did.
Now, if you're gonna have a prominent, aesthetically pleasing artificial amenity, it's gotta have a name.
The triple mando, which will be known as Chipmunk Gate.
We were on like our 3rd playoff hole of the Vibram Open at the time, first Disc Golf Pro Tour event, and I was more off on the right, and my shot was a very risky, crazy shot. So I was looking, hopefully I could just lay up and see what happens. And we let Michael Joe go first, and he threw a shot that looked good, and then there was like a reaction, and it turns out it bounced over a wall, and there was a little chipmunk scurrying around right where his disc hit. We called it the Chipmunk Gate. So it's been the Chipmunk Gate victory ever since, basically.
For those that don't know, in 2016 at the very first DGPT event, Bradley Williams and Michael Johansson went into an intense playoff. As MJ's approach went through the gap, it had a strange reaction resulting in commotion. Later, cameras revealed the disc apparently bounced off a running chipmunk and went OB, giving Bradley Williams the first victory on tour. See, the name is a lot cooler with the context. But I guess we'll have to see what Swiss Cheese feels tomorrow on This Week in Disc Golf, so subscribe to not miss out on that. Chipmunk Gate wasn't the only significant addition the course saw. Hole 7 would have an entirely new hole.
7, I think, is great. Our old fairway used to have a tree in the middle of it. 400 feet down the fairway, you'd have to either get lucky, miss it left or right. You couldn't just pure that gap. So this one feels like a good shot's going to be rewarded.
7, I'm just going to plead the fifth on 7.
Seven's hit or miss. You could see people hit early and take maybe a bogey, but it's going to be a hard birdie, but it's definitely doable.
I think it's just similar as good of hole as Old Hole 7, but Old Hole 7 I thought was also pretty iconic for the course, right down the path.
I think that's just as much fun as the old hole. And maybe a lot of people are sad to see it go, but they should be welcome to the change.
Looks like it needs to go really straight and then break late at the end, so I think the backhand's going to be tough to get past that right side wall.
Well, I think the forehand can play to about 30 feet to the right of the basket, and you can park it with a backhand if you really want to.
It's going to be easy to get into the little bowl in front of the pin, which is going to be at about a 50 to 70 foot putt, but depending where you are. And it's going to take a really good shot to scoot up that hill and give yourself a circle 1 putt.
Looks like this is going to be one of those like circle 2 holes. It's pretty fair here in this bowl.
Some of the players have said there's not going to be as many 5s, but there's not going to be as many 2s.
That hole's going to have some good separation because if you miss that gap, you'll probably take in a bigger number.
I still like it, but I really loved original 7 so much that it's hard to. I didn't like to see the change as much, but I could see it with the crowd because I landed there last year on hole 7, and it kind of looked like a Grateful Dead fest going on over there a little bit. There's just people laying on towels and stuff and all that over there not moving, so I can understand why now.
They got to find a way to funnel the spectators through the course without making a big problem there. So it makes sense to me, and I think it's a fine hole.
Along with hole 7, 9 would have a new alternate location sitting 200 feet back of the original spot.
9's amazing. I love that change.
Hole 9, wow. That's a crazy hole.
The par 5 on 9 looks amazing. I think it's a much better hole than the par 4 on 9. For 9, the par 4.
I think 9's almost unbirdieable in the short location for a huge number of the field. The only birdies I saw were people who threw so hard that went left and then just got lucky with a gap.
The hole doesn't really shape as a great disc golf hole because you do 85% of the work on the tee shot, and then there's just the ground's very uneven. It's just the shape of the hole is kind of weird. But when you add it as a par 5, you don't have to go as crazy aggressive off the tee to get into the landing zone for your second to then pitch up for 3.
I just love the features of the shot. There's such a 3 dimensions of shots there, like the tee shot, tunnel shot over the hill with all the erosion and the roots kind of thing. Shot over the thing is kind of neat. It's kind of like a little 56-degree wedge, or you can kind of get crafty with it, like a little Bubba Watson-y with it, trying to go gnarly with it.
I really worked at throwing a forehand that turned the whole way from where the landing zone is, even short of where most people are landing, just getting around and over and not letting it flex out. So I sat there and worked that forehand to get myself into the perfect layup zone.
There's like not a good layup zone to go over the water. It's very tricky footing, so it really comes up to where your lie is and how this hole plays.
With where the tee shots landed in all years previously, you're still going to have to lay up another time before you go over the water. You can get super aggressive, but I don't feel like doing that because you're on a downslope already, and I'm not trying to roll down that hill.
I feel like it could be even eagleable, but it depends on so many factors.
We have the eagle line set at 1/2. It's designed to not, it's not an eagle par 5, it's a par 5.
I mean, I think there are definitely players that are capable of doing it for sure. It's just like, is the risk worth it?
The shot across the water is a little sketchy, just with like the trees there. If you hit one, you're going OB, but I think it'll be fun.
The shot over the water on the 3rd shot now is awesome. So love the hole. It's got 3 hole dimensions to it, so that's a hell of a par 5. So.
Beth at 69.
I just told myself, you got to will this one in there. Whatever you have, just will it in there.
This man is unbelievable. This is what athletes live for. This is the moment.
With all 4 rounds being played at Maple Hill, they made good use of alternate pin locations.
Hole 1 and hole 9 both have alternate pins.
Instead of playing all 4 rounds through Chipmunk Gate into Grandma's house, there would be a short variation used for the first 2 days. I know some are confused by that decision, but before you get mad, let's hear who had the idea first.
We talked to Calvin Heimberg, and he said you can have alternate pins, but 30 feet's not enough. And so he said, I want the short pin on hole 1 to be used. And we went, oh.
I love the par 3 placement on hole 1. There's nothing better for the fans to watch than just a cool, almost 500-foot par 3 to start off the day with danger everywhere.
Playing this short pin just past the pond, which is 550, but Brad says it plays like 420.
Which allowed us to build the par 5 on hole 9. And so the par is the same Thursday through Sunday. And we were able to make that that happen, have alternate pins, but have them significantly different.
We were just saying that this is probably not the best hole to have the second pin. Not the most interesting hole in the world, and I feel like the regular hole 1 is a great hole.
Hole 14 is one of the most recognizable on the property, and this year there was a retaining wall added to the edge, allowing for more aggressive runs at the basket for players landing on the safe left side.
Hole 14, we built a new wall, a retaining wall to protect the green.
They put the little bit of a wall on hole 14. That looks nice. It definitely makes me more aggressive when I'm putting. So I can run the putt. If I miss it, if it rolls, it's still going to be in bounds. That's nice to see.
We actually are going to have a marshal on this hole making the calls. We didn't want to require the players to try to determine if they were in just for a little bit or not. So we will have a dedicated marshal there.
I love there being a dedicated marshal on this hole all weekend. When you know there's going to be questionable calls, might as well be proactive about any possible issues. But of course, with everything new, it couldn't have been implemented without some words.
I don't love how it's uneven. I think we're going to see some players definitely hit the top of the wall where some will throw a worse shot, or not necessarily a worse shot, but just in a similar area, but they'll get over the wall.
The top of the wall is not all the same. Some of the stakes go into the mud a little far.
Quick note, so this wall is really good for about 99% of it, I would say.
There's probably 2 or 3 gaps that are 6 inches wide where a disc could hit, and if it's going fast enough, could pop up and over because it's only like an inch or 2 above.
A couple of these, maybe just one of them, honestly, is really short.
That would be
and this
so
one
sad.
would be so sad to have a rollaway ramp up over that, and just it'd be so easy to do too. I feel like you could easily do that.
And the guy that goes through there is going to hate us, and I'm sorry.
Although it might look like a minor change, hole 6 had a few guardian trees cleared, as well as moving the basket closer to the wall and elevating it.
They actually made 6 a lot easier this year, cutting some of the trees. That was a great change.
I severely underestimated what Simon meant when he said they thinned out the green bunker here. This right here used to just be a wall of skinnies like these.
Definitely something the course needed to make it less of a fluky hole. I'd like to see improvements like that on this course. I think it just makes me like it even more.
I think that they literally probably cut like 20 of them out. Hole 6. This one's slightly adjusted. The pin is now way closer to the OB rock wall on the right.
They moved the basket back, so now I think this inside play is way more viable.
Yeah.
You just hit this tree and you're, like 35 feet short.
Can't argue how awesome this would be if I was spectating. And I know that Steve dodges attentions. That's literally why hole 7 was changed. But it does bring up an interesting point of when to cut off spectators from being too close to the action. Last week we saw complaints about kids right on the OB line, and now at this event, it's being embraced.
The second advantage of the triple mando, in my opinion, is we can put spectators on the sides. When there wasn't a triple mando, people could throw through there, and then you can't put spectators there. So we allow for like a 30-foot buffer, and then we put spectators, and we cleaned out a bunch of the branches, so it's actually a really nice viewing area. You can see all the way up to the women's tee, even the bleachers for the men's tee.
Spectators are allowed to stand literally 8 feet from this basket.
Yeah.
They're allowed to stand like right here.
Yep.
So they can almost like reach into the basket and grab your disc.
That is funny.
And you have to putt with them standing right there.
Yep.
Knowing that if you airball, you're
smoking them,
clonking someone in the face.
Maybe it'll bounce back in bounds though, and that'd be kind of nice.
The change is primarily predicated by spectators. I wanted the spectators on the road not walking through the woods, and I wanted the players in the woods not playing on the road.
I told Gage it needs to be as hard as the old hole 7, and the spectators need to walk on the road. Those are your parameters.
Drop in the comments how you think disc golf events should handle spectators, because this year alone we've seen examples of fans, spotters, or whatever else affecting discs. But at the same time, you gotta provide an experience that isn't boring. I will also add, at the MVP Open, every place spectators are close, there is some sort of structure blocking them from play. If it be a rock wall, wood, or Mandos. Clearly the spectator experience was thoroughly planned out. See? Costco snacks don't need to be the only thing cool at events. One thing's for sure though, Maple Hill is anything but boring. You got tight lines, bombs, crafty shots, and everything else you could ever want. Need more convincing? Go ask anyone spectating hole 8, which is where you'll see me this weekend. The MVP Open is one of the best events all season, and it starts today. Drop in the comments who you think will take it down. For the past 4 years, this tournament hasn't seen a repeat winner. And more surprising, Christian Tatar has never won on this track. Tune in tomorrow for This Week in Disc Golf, where Swiss will break down everything from round 1, and you'll even have a chance to win an exclusive disc. Make sure to not miss out on anything you need to know from this weekend by dropping a sub. As always, the Disc Golf world has you covered. So for real, smack that subscribe button. Not sure why you're waiting longer than a Gannon Burr putt. Seriously, just press the damn button. We know you come back every week anyways. How else would you know what to talk about on your podcast?